talking about it on the pod. Fuck it, we'll do it live.
Get another hot water. Hot water. It's the thirst. It's the thirst mutilator.
And welcome back to the BigCheese.ai podcast. I am Andre Hericus, the world's 24th best moderator, joined by Sean Hayes and Jacob Wise, two tech leaders in Indianapolis. And last but not least, Brandon Corbin, one of the brightest AI minds in the Midwest. Today, we're going to be doing AI content generation and its impact on the industry in general. There's been a lot of things that came out this week, especially with the advent of, even from a couple weeks back, with ChatGPT Turbo 4 and DALL-E and the upgrades it had. Like, now we're watching memes come to life. And there's a lot of things happening in the content world that are wild. Another thing that's wild is we officially have like a super famous fake girl. And that's going to be where we kick off the episode, because Jacob has done a ton of research on this girl. And
He deep dived. He deep dove.
He's done a deep dive on her Instagram page. So, Jacob, what's happening?
Oh, yeah. So I think the origin is a Spanish modeling company, and I don't know, they were just pissed off about having to, pay too much for models, and they're too hard to deal with. So they just made one, an AI generated one, and she blew up. She is making them a lot of money, doing a lot of endorsements, and she's very good looking. We'll have a link probably in the show notes that I can share. But yeah, it's pretty interesting because she's not real, right? Oh yeah.
I haven't seen this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I've seen the name.
She has 150,000 followers on Instagram.
She's a fake person.
It's just
But
an
it's,
AI.
it's bringing in about 10 grand a month right now
Yeah.
in ads. And if you go through the comments, there are just a bunch of simps out there doing oh, you're the prettiest thing I've ever seen. Can I get your phone number? Oh no,
Yeah.
no question.
address.
I guarantee it, right? Because that's what's going to be happening. Like, she is just the precursor of what our future is. Like, where before you had to look like Brad Pitt to be the super monster famous person.
Yeah.
Now they're not gonna exist. It's not gonna be real. I mean, the future is fake, no question.
With AI, there is a new layer of catfish that is emerging, and it's going to be rocking people's worlds. I don't think that we're ready for that, to have not just one girl who's famous on Instagram for being beautiful, but 1,000, 10,000 girls that you can interact with and have conversations with. And obviously, we're all familiar with different platforms that you can interact and things like that. And I think that's going to blow up.
There was another one too that was like, hi, Grandma, this is Julie or whatever it was, and I forget what who put that video out, but the premise is like, I'm kidnapped and I need $100,000.
That call was made to my grandpa before he passed away. He called me, and he was like, "Why are you in Vegas in jail? Blah blah blah."
Really?
That whole scam works.
Well,
Yep, it's
but
happened
did
for a
they?
while.
So they probably texted him, right?
They called him.
They called him.
That whole scam's been around for a long time.
But did they use your voice?
Well, no, I don't think so. But they don't know. They're old. They go
They're old.
I think
They can't recognize voices.
but the point that Brandon's trying to make, I think,
It could be a FaceTime at this point, right? Where it's
Oh,
just
my
like,
God.
Yeah.
oh, hey, I'm trapped in a Mexico prison. You need to send $500,000.
Yeah, and I think they've been talking about deepfakes for a while, and you're worried about a famous person going on and saying something crazy, but
Right.
now the local
Yeah,
version of that
yeah.
is the deep fake of you. I think I used an app, I forget what it was called, but I created an AI generated version of myself last week, and it was 5 minutes of recording.
Right.
It came out and it says, "You're a cautious techie guy." And I'm like, "Oh, you son of a bitch. How dare you?" But it sounded pretty much like me, right?
Yeah.
Like on the other end of a call, I bet it could fool my family.
Did
right?
they only did voice though, right? Like
Yeah.
there was no
No,
photo stuff.
that one didn't do visual, no.
Right.
But it was mostly focused on voice and personality, mimicking me there. But like you said, I'm sure there's video versions that you can.
Well,
do
we're
today.
still trying to find those because they all suck.
Yeah.
Like we went through and we tried to generate, some 3D art versions of ourselves, and we tried character.ai or whatever some of the other ones were. And I don't know about you guys, but I never had any luck.
Oh, you have made the best one by far of anyone, though.
Well, which one?
Mine still looks nothing
Well,
like
but yours, you were describing yours to ChatGPT or to
I
DALL-E.
did both.
Oh.
I described mine to
DALL-E through
DALL-E,
ChatGPT.
Through ChatGPT.
Right.
And
I tried
Midjourney.
that.
Oh.
But the Midjourney one, Midjourney has a feature where you can upload an image. Jacob and I sat there like for 3 hours one night and tried
Right.
it. You can upload an image and it will generate, and then give it a prompt. So you basically, you upload the image and then you attach a prompt to that image.
Okay.
And Midjourney will then generate 4 versions of that prompt.
Yeah.
And it'll use the data that it would attain from the image to try to make it look. It's not able. Maybe it's the prompt, whatever. It's not able to generate it like with the likeness. So you're
Right.
really telling it, please make this look as much like me as possible,
Right.
but cartoony.
So when I was doing Stable Diffusion, you had the ability to where you could go and basically generate. I took a bunch of photos of my daughter and then did kind of I forget what the terminology specifically was, but basically created a Laura. I think it was a Laura, LORA, which then let me basically go in and put in anything in my prompt as long as I would tag it as Maddie. Then it would end up looking kind of like her. So I was in. I mean, that was now. I mean, that had to be a year and a half, if not 2 years ago. And to this day, I went through one and I uploaded like 20 photos of my ugly mug, and it looked nothing like me. It was like a dude with a beard and glasses, and that was about it.
Now, I've seen, so there's like a lot of AI personalities on YouTube and elsewhere. I've seen I think it's possible. It's not mainstream.
Right.
But either that or some people are just getting, an artist to do it for them.
Well, so my LinkedIn photo, and it's the one that you've used, was AI generated.
Yeah,
at
that
this
one was really
point,
good.
right?
Yeah.
That one, but it was the same exact thing where I uploaded like 30 different photos,
Wait,
and then
that's
If
AI
you
generated?
zoom in
Yeah,
on
it's
it, if
always
you
been.
zoom in on it, you'll see my iris of my eye is like melting. Right, and because my wife's like, here's the thing though, is I hate it. I think it looks great, but you would never wear that suit. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, I probably never would wear that because again, I only wear black. But yeah, so that one actually was like one of the best ones. And I've tried to go through my email trying to figure out like, where did I do this? Because I want to do it again. But I still want us to have the ones that are kind of like the Pixar inspired styles. And
So-
man, it's been tough.
So really, we're talking about content generation, and right now what you're seeing is an explosive growth in non-text based content.
And it's completely streamlining and automating the content creation industry as a whole right now.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things you're seeing, I think the biggest thing you're seeing is people are using it to generate content on the web.
Right. Have you guys been seeing anybody who's actually announced or tagging that articles were AI generated?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I remember there's a publication. Well, first of all, Sports Illustrated came out yesterday. Did you see that?
Yeah.
And they were like, holy shit, our articles are being generated with AI, and their journalists didn't know.
Yeah. Well, it went as far as to like they generated fake journalists to say that that's who wrote it, and they didn't disclose it. So to your point, I think what we're seeing is like this is a brave new world, and I don't think generating AI generated content is necessarily bad, but there's this conversation being had like, do you need to let people know that it was AI generated, or is I don't know, but I think this story tells maybe yes, maybe.
So that's I think that's an interesting topic of conversation here. Is disclosure of AI content, should that be just a thing?
I mean, I think if you're maintaining journalistic integrity, right? You're supposed to source your sources. You're supposed to have you're supposed to do those things. I'm sure that those industry standards have to be there. So I would say yes.
Right.
Do I think it matters? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think
that is the question. Does it matter?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Right.
think that
Well,
it
Google-
depends if it's, there's people that write in non-factual information on trusted publications all the time.
Newsmax?
Yeah.
I mean,
Just kidding, Newsmax.
I think that one of the things about AI is the other thing is the bias. Is like, where is it scraping its data from, and where is it harvesting its data from,
Right.
and how is it perpetuating correct information or misinformation?
Yeah.
I think to make matters less complicated, I think there's a definite use case for aggregation, summarization.
Yeah.
Like who needs to go write the AP summary of, the Phoenix Suns versus Boston Celtics game last night.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not sure that needs to be done by a human anymore.
Yeah.
Right. I get a summary every week of how I did in my fantasy league. Right. That's not written by a human. Right. That's written by AI because it's just taking data that's coming from a system that based of fact. Right. And it's summarizing that. So, but I think where it starts to, if you don't want to get in a huge rabbit hole about journalism, but yeah, I mean, there's a huge risk to journalism, and people are going to be.
But that's journalism, right? So, like, what about this Athena chick on Instagram, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, you're threatening. I think it's, in my opinion, it might be a threat to all those industries: marketing, journalism, entertainment. I mean, you have models on Instagram who have 100,000 followers. Right. There's people that worked for years to get that level of following and worked on their physique and everything that's included being a model, which is not easy, to get famous and start generating revenue. Now you can just create it automatically. Yeah. You have people in marketing like me today. I was interacting with coaches on Twitter, and Aaron and I created a GPT that basically we could insert the tweets from coaches, and it created responses for my company. Right. Well, we can just basically turn that on now.
Is content the most important or most impacted current state aspect of AI in the business world? Is content the most impacted aspect right now?
It's got to be, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
I
because
think absolutely.
It's we've got text, we've got images, and and video, which is coming. So Stable Diffusion video stuff is slowly starting to happen, and they're starting to get it to where it can, like, each frame can be kind of consistent and whatnot. So yeah, it would seem like that would be impact, like.
And so if that's truly the case, you can focus on it diluting existing really good content sources out there. I think there's ways around that. If I'm a truly connoisseur of information, I know I go to the right author, or the right book, or the right website, or you know what I mean. I'm smart enough to be able to sift through that kind of stuff. Where I kind of go is more the positive side, where it's like augmenting what you're doing to make it better. Like I see videos. There's awesome things you can do now inside PowerPoint and Canva and all these tools to take your crappy presentation and in a few minutes use AI to make it awesome.
Yeah,
right? To make your data and your information talk.
Well, that's a kind of a theme that we've always talked about, is how to get people to spend more time doing creative things, right? Like lowering the barrier to entry to do the monotonous text generation, image generation work, stuff that doesn't add a ton of value but takes a lot of time. And then get it to, like, okay, curate the data, or put it together in a creative way that is easier for someone to digest or consume. So that's exciting to me, but there's a whole host of worms or can of worms that opens up a little bit. So one thing I was interested about was early on, ChatGPT comes out and everyone's like, oh, we're going to use it to write blog posts. And then everyone was concerned that this was going to be a Google black hat thing. And cautious people pumped the brakes and said, not yet. We're not going to use it yet. But Google straight up came out and said, we don't care how your content is generated. If it's AI generated, as long as it's useful, we aren't going to penalize you for that. The only thing they care about is it accurate and useful to users? And all the same metrics that they use now to rank content. So,
yeah, I mean,
is it accurate? It's an interesting. How are they determining if it's accurate or not?
Well, I think
the
users maybe
probably,
the more impactful thing Jacob said is, are users getting value out of it, and they know that.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Right.
They, with GA4, they know the engagement level on a page. Right. They know if people are reading it. Right. And if people are coming back to it. If they can take those engagement statistics and they can use that to rank the quality of the content,
right?
And that might circle around the truth factor.
Yeah, and honestly, probably accuracy isn't true. It's more about, do people find it engaging and useful? And you could make an argument that people tend to things that are useful or things that are accurate, but sometimes it's not.
Jacob and I spent a long time with Crafted trying to figure out a way to convince our clients to build headless websites.
Right.
Okay. And so a headless is a concept that is really, really hard for some people to understand because it's more technical, but it really achieves a lot of things that you need, which is around technical SEO, engagement, performance, cross-platform integration, all these things. So we had to educate. right? And so Jacob and I took all our ideas and we really, really put it into a really organized system. But then we utilized AI to help us kind of finish it because we're busy as shit and we don't have time to finish this entire massive content project.
Right.
Yeah.
So we created these pillar pages on our website. This pillar concept Jacob created, and really we just started just chipping away. And eventually we ended up creating this headless guide, which is on our website, and it's pretty useful.
Yeah.
It can be improved, but at the end of the day, like for us that we don't spend a gobs and gobs amount of time doing content marketing, I would argue that it was useful and helpful for us.
Yes, it was. And I think, we wouldn't have done it without ChatGPT. It still took a decent amount of time, but I mean, it's just one of those things that it lowered the barrier to entry and we were able to communicate our thoughts in a more concise and effective way. So, yeah, I mean, I love it. I love the idea that these tools can help us to accelerate those things. And if you're busy, you don't want to spend a lot of time on sort of the monotonous stuff, like you reach for this stuff. So
Yeah, I think it's a huge cost saver too. I mean, I was on the negative side before, and I'm back on the positive side. Like, it's a massive cost saver. Like you were mentioning, you can create an entire presentation instead of having to send it off to a professional presentation maker or some sort of designer.
Yeah.
Now it's just beautiful, and that allows you to go out and present. And if you're a startup founder, you can go raise capital better, and you have more beautiful touch points. It's like that's great.
Last night, my girlfriend was creating a PowerPoint, and she was looking for a Labrador with a doctor's coat on, right? And
She's just looking for a Labrador
she
with a
needed
doctor's
it.
coat.
It was vital for her presentation, and she went on the internet
Is it
and
a
found
black lab or a white lab?
it was a golden retriever actually.
Okay.
Sorry, and she found some great images on the internet, right? But if she hadn't, I was like, you could just go to DALL-E 3 and say, give me this, right? So I think it's helping to shortcut some of these approaches to generating content. It's like I don't need to go search 20 different places for it. I can just generate exactly what I'm trying to look
That's,
for.
I think, the most fun. And of all the things we've been messing with at Big Cheese, we love the image generation
It's
stuff.
so fun.
Because you can truly take your imagination and create a world out of it so quickly. I mean, if you go to our podcast.BigCheese.ai website, we generate a mouse image for every episode. And some of the images that Jacob's created they're just, I mean, I just love them. Yeah. They're like creative to the point where you give it this prompt and then the AI kind of puts its little spin on it.
It does. Yeah, it adds its own like nice little touches to it.
Well, I think my favorite part about that is I've always wanted to be able to draw, and I've tried a lot to draw. I suck at it. I just whatever my brain does is to my hand. I can't do it. I just can't do it. I have ideas, and I can't get them onto paper, right? But these tools help the creative side come out a little bit more, and I can actually have a playground and visualize what I'm trying to do. So that's fun.
Right.
I like that.
And that's what's going to happen. So you talk about images and text.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the basic fundamentals, right?
Yeah.
People are building open world games and videos, and you're going to see movies coming out that are entirely generated in an artificial world. And you're going to see some stuff coming out of that. Talk about Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
You're going to see, and the interesting thing is it's using all human knowledge to create this stuff, right? So all this stuff is inspired from the real world, but it's like, it's going to, so the outcomes of it are just going to be things that people have never seen, and they're going to be drawn to it.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's like I just saw this on X this past week. I thought I sent it in the Slack chat. Apparently, I didn't actually click the send. It was just in my little bar.
It was in your drive.
But it's a platform called Pika. And if you guys watch this video, it's one of the most
How do you spell Pika for our listeners?
Pika. If you look up Pika, all you do is you type in a prompt, and it'll create an entirely custom video. Like, it's beautiful what it looks like. If you type in create a walking junk robot, that walking junk robot looks like a walking junk robot moving. I mean, like, I don't know how any better it can look.
They just raised $55 million.
It seriously is the most incredible video, ChatGPT or AI video creator that I've ever seen. And like they're going to create movies on that platform.
Oh, by
That's
the way,
amazing.
Female CEO, female CTO. Let's go.
Love it.
That's cool. Hey, what was that thing we were on YouTube the other day playing around with, and it warned us about AI generated content or whatever? Do you remember that? where it was saying
Oh, he was going to start tagging videos that
Oh,
were
yeah,
generated
right.
by AI.
completely, and I think we were more thinking like they're gonna this kind of stuff. It's like completely
versus like Opus clips.
Yeah, because
Right.
just for the listeners out there, we use AI to augment some of our videos to add, like
We use AI for
a lot of
fucking
things.
everything we possibly can.
but it's real video of us that's just being
Right.
edited slightly. Whereas like I think YouTube,
Except for Jacob, he's not real.
I'm not real.
He is an AI generated
on
character.
Instagram.
So here's a funny idea. This is actually something that Aaron brought up. What if, as a part of some of our guests on our podcast, we interviewed AI?
That would be fun.
Yeah, that would be
Like
cool.
we had fake guests.
So
So we interviewed like I don't know, some like deceased awesome person. I mean, Napoleon. If we had Napoleon
we
on
could
the show,
we could
All right,
totally.
Brandon, next
We're
week.
gonna do it. We're gonna do
Because
it.
that would be
Absolutely.
huge.
Yeah, we're gonna do it.
That'd be cool.
And we could absolutely just leverage ChatGPT's voice.
Can I recommend the guest?
What if we
Absolutely.
interviewed Napoleon?
Bobby Knight?
Oh yeah.
Let's interview
Ooh.
Bobby Knight.
We need to get all the prompt in there. All right.
and make sure there's no chairs around.
That would be
I just got that zing. And definitely, it's going to be an R-rated episode.
that would be a very cool.
Just Google Bobby Knight in a sand trap before you go home and watch the video. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life.
We've been so my wife is learning Italian. My son has been doing Spanish for a long time, and he stopped paying for some app because he just wasn't using it enough. And I'm like, well, what's the experience like? He's like, well, I was just able to have a conversation with it. I'm like, well, shit, I think we could totally do this with ChatGPT. So we just launched the app and said, hey, I want you to act like a Spanish tutor and give me a challenge one at a time. Let me reply. But we tweaked it a bit. And so, and we did the same thing for my wife for Italian, and they were just going back and forth having full conversations with these people, being like, how would you say blah, 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 blah? And
it's just a text response, or was it?
Well, and so, but you launch it in the audio conversation.
Ooh.
And so then it's like, how would you say this in Spanish? And then he says it in Spanish, and it's like, oh, that's either right or wrong. And again, now it's not free because we're paying for,
Right.
Plus to have that functionality.
I think Duolingo came out recently and was talking about how much they're leveraging.
Oh,
AI
they've got to.
Yeah. Well, but to your point, I mean, it's how accessible is that?
Right.
You
Right.
can just do that in
Yeah,
ChatGPT now.
yeah. So, and that's kind of that piece is that a lot of these.
ChatGPT the ultimate? If it can be done in ChatGPT, it will be done in ChatGPT.
Probably.
Yes.
Yeah. Someone surely has created a GPT for it.
Yeah, but we're going to be the first podcast to interview ancient heroes.
I wonder if anybody's done that.
It could be.
I think we'll be the first
It could be
podcast
Drunk
ever.
History, right? Do you remember? Did anyone ever watch that show?
Oh yeah.
But really, we're drunk and we're talking to historical figures.
I think so.
Pivot.
I've been reading books on. I guys have this delusion of grandeur
Congratulations.
that I can.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a first. For me. I've been reading. This
I'm reading book.
I read one single book. I read the first 30 pages of
Read
a
a
book,
book.
which is all you need usually. But it's all about writing movies and screenplays. And with these context windows that are so huge now, do you think, because the books I've been reading about what makes a good story arc and plot and subplot, and what makes a good story, which is plot, subplot, right? Do you think that there could be a GPT that could take in an entire book and analyze the structure of the plot and analyze if it was good or bad?
I would assume that you could with the Turbo because that's 300. What is it? 300 pages, I think, is kind of what they're saying for the Turbo the 4 Turbo model. That it, as long as it's less than 300 pages, it should be able to take it. And,
think about if you were think about people that read screenplays, actors,
Yeah.
like people all in Hollywood, right?
Right.
Like think about if you could literally just review every screenplay that's in your queue in 10 minutes and find out which ones are the good ones and which ones are the bad ones.
So this is kind of full circle because, I don't know, 1600s, they were trying, the first, generative AI-ish stuff that they were trying to do was, creating the perfect story, right? And it was a choose-your-own-adventure, but one word at a time kind of thing. And the whole process was, we know... I'm going to butcher this, but they kind of knew the structure of a plot, right? And how that would work. And then they built these big just manual word lookup things. So it's they've been trying to do this kind of stuff, and now you're just on the other side, right? Like, now it's like I want to consume that, but with AI.
Well, I think there's a lot of generation, but I like to know about how to analyze if something is good, something is bad, and
That's
autocorrect.
Yeah, yeah. That's an interesting question because good and bad is so subjective to the individual. That
Netflix will be like, will this be good for this sub-segment of people? Because that's what they already do, is like they just try to.
Well, think about if Netflix has that data, right, and they know, and they could basically turn these stories into math. They could easily create plots and screenplays from AI, and then feed that into an AI and literally produce the movie.
Yeah, so
and it could be a movie that people would want to watch.
That's the Black Mirror TV show that we were talking about last week, right? So I think it's episode 1. I think it's season 5 of Black Mirror is what's out now, and episode 1 is the premise that basically, and it's Netflix. I mean, they have they don't call it Netflix, but it's got the logo that looks kind of like Netflix, the N, the boom, and the colors and all that stuff, and that they're dynamically generating the TV show in near real time, based on this one person who they're like, yep, that's who's going to be our actress, and they're using her phone data and all this stuff, and just because she signed up for the service, she agreed to basically let them use her phone and her data to basically be able to use a story.
You know what would be a show that everyone would watch every day? Would be a dramatized
show about
dramatized show about their day.
So
someone shows up to work and they're punching the clock and doing this, but like it's taking in that data, right? And then they go home and watch like a fantasized version where when their boss gets in their face, I don't even know what they do.
Right. Okay. So
turn up the risk.
So I have this kind of. So I've been doing it where I now track I can say, hey Siri, track, and it'll be like, what do you want to track? I'll be like sleep, and it'll be like, what value? And I'll be 7.5. And would you like to leave a note? I'm like, yeah, I had a rough night of sleep, right? And so I track all my stuff kind of throughout the day, and I can just go to my large language model and basically be able to like write a story about my day. And it does, and it's like, you woke up at 7:50, and you had a good night of sleep at 7, blah, 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 and then you did some push-ups, and then you had some this, and it's just like, this is actually kind of cool. Like, I mean, it's telling me a story of my day.
That's coming. So think about what Apple's going to do with their AI about you.
The journal.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Apple wins again in this situation. There's probably a world, if you really think about it, take a step back, there's probably a world in the future where we're all talking about content and like creating on social media, where the movies you're watching, the experience you have on a day-to-day basis in the digital world, whether it's on your phone or it's like overcast on a VR, is going to be completely unique to you and what you want to see. A little kind of correlation is Aaron told me a story about he was in the airport, and there's like this new thing in the airports where like on the screens, if you look up and like it knows. You scan a thing and you stand in front of the screen. Everyone else is like, there's like different dots along this path and like this big screen. And if you scan your ticket, it'll show you like where you're supposed to go in the airport, but everyone's looking at the exact same screen, but seeing something else.
Whoa.
And that's like exactly.
So it's using like the angle.
Yeah,
of
based on where you are, you're seeing something else on the screen, and someone else is also seeing something else.
Like
that's what
Minority
it's going to
Report,
be.
man.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that movie, Minority Report? Like
You've never seen Minority Report?
I've not.
Okay. Tonight, you literally need to watch Minority Report.
That's one of the greatest, most creative. Not greatest movies. I'd say one of the most creative movies.
Yeah, it's an excellent movie.
And I will say, as much as you want to talk about Tom Cruise, Colin Farrell, stud in that movie. The FBI guy or whatever he is, stud.
Absolutely.
He was ready for that one.
Yeah.
Do we know why they printed them onto the wooden balls?
No.
No one does.
Okay.
But there's a scene that
makes no
where one of the precogs, so it's basically this concept that you have these people who have precognition of what's going to happen, right? But there's one where she's like, run! run. And I watched this movie with my daughter when she was like, I don't know, like 8 or something like that. And to this day, if I say run like that, she just gets chills down her. She's like, I can't. Like that just scared the shit out of her.
So basically, Tom Cruise runs the precog crime unit.
Yeah.
And they catch criminals before they commit acts.
Yeah.
And basically, there hasn't been a murder in L.A. or whatever in 20 years. And like the first scene of the movie is this guy is about to commit a crime of passion. It's super intense.
Oh, dude.
And they come in and they bust his ass right before he kills his wife.
Right.
Oh my God,
it's such a good movie.
Yeah, it's a good,
I've got to pee really quick. I'll be right back.
Such a good movie.
So yeah.
So I have a question for you, Brandon.
Yeah.
Then. If I'm a person and I want to write an entire book using ChatGPT,
okay,
how would I go about doing that?
So so the first thing is I think you need to ditch chat.openai.com and go to the playground.
Okay.
And so the playgrounds, I think it's like at beta.openai.com/playground. And what the playground gets you is you have the option of picking which models you're working with. You're able to adjust your top K, your top P. You're able to adjust how many characters are output, where when you're in just the chat interface, you don't have any of that luxury, right? And so the first thing that you need to do is you need to ask it to generate you the outline for your book, right? So it's going to generate your outline. And then you're going to take that outline, and you're actually. So the other thing that the playground has is it has the system setting that's over on the left side, where you can basically just say, I want you to act like a pirate and only answer things like you're a pirate, right? And so then anytime you ask it a question, it's going to be like "Yar, matey," right? And it's gonna output it. But what you do is then you take that outline and you drop that into the system prompt, and now you say, I want you to generate section 1.1. Section 1.2.
Is it going to be able to maintain context the entire time?
And it can do it, yes, because that system prompt's always going to be present there. So now what I have found, because I was trying to generate like entire podcasts, that was one thing I was playing around with, where I was like, I want to just give it a topic. I'm going to generate a huge podcast, and then I'm going to have, some audio, and I forget which one I was working with. To then generate the voice. And
so we're being replaced.
Yeah, so then we ultimately get
We
replaced.
lasted 7 episodes.
But it worked. It was actually what I call it, the United States of history or something like that. And it was basically I picked a location. I would go do and I would have it pull a bunch of research about interesting like things that happened in Indianapolis, and then it would write a whole thing. But again, it would start repeating itself. It would it would start pulling a lot of the same conversation that you'd have in section 1 would be in part of section 2. So that's when I moved it to, and I started just doing it manually in the playground. It ended up working pretty well, like where it kept it. And now that you've got these huge context windows, that I think it stays with it better. But yeah, so the playground is absolutely where you want to be, and you want to do things like I want you to act like a blog writer who has 30 years experience, and and I want you to output this, and so you can really give it a lot of. You can prime it a lot, and you can tell, and you can even give it examples. Like if it's not outputting things that you want, I want it to be in this kind of format, or I want this type of thing, or I don't want this kind of thing. And all of those things go basically into your system prompt, and then you just go over and you start having conversations. No matter what, there's not an answer right now where you can just go and be like, write me a full book about, the beauty of, the swallow. I don't know, whatever.
I think the future of work is you're not generating the content, you're curating what's coming out of the AI.
Exactly. You're copying, you're pasting it, you're editing it, you're mixing it together.
Movies, right, that there's just this nice flow, like Space Odyssey, right? I mean, that's more of just like asking questions and interacting. But like, there's a lot of movies. I think there's even Star Wars episodes where they're kind of working on like a vehicle, or they're fixing a car, and they're getting information and feedback from the robot,
right?
Yeah.
Right. But the robot's doing all the work, but they're the ones that are making like the decisions.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
And that's really where I think a lot of this is going. Is you're once again augmenting or taking the lift off of the actual output.
Yeah.
And then you're taking that output and then you're refining it and making it better.
Right.
And just using that to probably, at the end of the day, still come out with your creative input.
Right.
That you want to.
Yeah. Reducing
and how you
cognitive
deploy
load.
it is also that's very important.
Totally.
You know, you can have like amazing content,
Right.
whether that be articles or videos or pictures or what have you, right?
And what
But
do
if
we
you
see
can't get
right
the
now,
eyeballs.
But if you
What do
can't get the outcomes depending on the channel, then it's
doesn't
all good
matter.
and well.
Well, here's a question: how big of it at a disadvantage are college students right now that are being asked not to use ChatGPT?
That's and it's bullshit.
All right.
It's absolute. I'm sorry. It's total bullshit that they're like, you can't use ChatGPT. I'm like, to my son, I'm like, use it, like abuse it. Go in there. I mean, because this isn't going away. This isn't like.
And I actually say that my niece is a senior at Ball State and she's in marketing, and her marketing teacher tells them to use ChatGPT all the time.
See that? Okay, so that's.
But that's that's their thinking. He's probably from the business background, and he's thinking execution.
Yeah.
Right, where you might be in the legal or the medical or the bio, you know what I mean, or even in the writing.
Yeah.
Right, where they're like, you need to absolutely have all this, and this needs to
Right.
come from you, or else you're cheating.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, they're going to be at a disadvantage. I mean, I think about my 8-year-old and my 10-year-old. I mean, by the time they get to college, they'll have been using AI for years.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
they're going to be using them to learn and create things.
Yep.
Right.
And there's going to be people that come out into the workforce that didn't had to learn that. You know, most people do learn it on the job, but let's be honest. But I think that there's probably a thought or a risk of not using AI to create right
Yeah.
now, or at least learning how, because you just blathered off and you use it all the time, all these different ways and means to do those things. And so I think it's probably right now, it's like, go start with ChatGPT,
Yep.
right? And DALL-E, go pay $20 a month for the extra,
Yep.
and start using that in your daily workflows.
For a lot of your creatives, I mean, you're going to have a very large advantage over those who aren't using it.
Yeah. Now, my son apparently might have gotten called out on one article that he turned in that might have been heavily inspired by ChatGPT. It might have been actually one of his computer science classes, because he's like, first of all, I hate programming, and I'm just like, oh. But that's fine. Whatever. Like, I get it. He's like, he likes Photoshop better. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, I can appreciate you wanting to be a designer more than a programmer. And he's like, so I'm just having it write ChatGPT, just output the HTML that I'm supposed to be generating for this class. And I'm like, well, that's what I do. I mean, if I have to go and have it write, like, I don't know how many times I need to ask ChatGPT to write me a function that does X, Y, and Z. And I'm just like, all right, this is fine, because it does what I need it to do. And so, like, for me, I'm like, there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, apparently he got in trouble for using it.
Not to harp on this too much, but I've said it so many times, having a fundamental understanding of what you're doing and using AI is the way to go.
That's using AI, and you're using it a lot, and you're only 20 years old. Into a decade from now, you're 30 years old. You're going to inherit. You're naturally going to just learn how some of this stuff works.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I
agree.
like the whole fact that any teacher who's like, you can't use ChatGPT, because the fact is this is going to be integrated. This is going to be a new tool that everybody's going to be using. So let them use it. Let them figure out how to get better at prompt engineering. Let them figure out how to communicate with these AIs.
And to all the people out there that have been asked to do so much at work, that have to work 60 hours a week.
Right.
I.e., I'm telling my wife all the time to do her Sunday messages, and all this summarization of all this and cohesion of all this information that is being sent to her, and then she has to blast it in a concise manner to her people. Use ChatGPT.
Yes.
Use tools
Yeah.
like that. Like if you're out there and you're overworked because you have to produce a bunch of stuff, respond to a bunch of emails, you're the number one candidate, because you can reduce your workload from 60 hours to 35 hours to 30 hours, and spend those 10 hours doing something that you actually wanted to do.
And it gives you a better
I'll
output.
give founders out there who, I mean, you guys are all really hacky anyways, but I'll give you a little cheat code, all right? So when it comes to investor updates, oh boy, every 30 days you've got to whip something up and figure something out. All right, so when it comes to investor updates, or you're going out to talk to an investor, and you're going to have the pitch, and then they're going to send you back, typically, if they're interested, a series of questions. And you're going to type out those questions, and you're going to think this is the best thing ever. But you don't know what you don't know, so you can put that in a ChatGPT. You can have it help you write the answers to the questions. But the next layer is then going into the chat and saying, hey, if you were an investor, what are the kind of questions and concerns you would have based off of these answers? And now give me those. And then based off those questions and concerns, you say, okay, rewrite my email. And you can do that a couple of times where you basically have a perfectly impenetrable email where it's like perfectly worded. You're kind of alleviating risks, potential risks you might have created because you said something wild in an email you should not have said. That I've used that before, a little bit of a cheat code for it to have you tell you like what's wrong with it and then have it make it better and then kind of do that a couple of times and then you're really going to be at the end of the road.
And I think you're going to be a better founder for going through that process.
You should probably also do that too, where it's like, why was this better?
Yep.
So
and you can absolutely be like, I want you to correct it, but I also want you to tell me where I was wrong.
Yeah.
And it'll go through it and it's just going to tell you. The one of the ones I wanted to bring up on the show was copy.ai.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So like I started playing around with Copy. Copy AI has a lot of really interesting tools in there to help you do kind of long format where you can kind of like copy this to the editor, you can highlight things, you can have it rewrite. But Copy AI in terms of like generating long form content seems like one of the better tools to check out. It's just copy.ai.
Have you used Jasper? It's a similar tool.
It is.
Jasper's around like pre-AI.
Yeah, Jasper's
kind of
been
augmented,
around
which is
for a
pretty
long
cool.
time.
I've used Copy as well. Those tools are amazing for those like longer form generations. So.
Well, guys, we've talked about AI content generation for writers, for marketers, for blog writers, for you insert creative, and we talked about it. There's a bright and beautiful world ahead of us, especially for Jacob with the famous Instagram model. This is the Big Cheese AI podcast. I'm Andre Hericus, joined by Sean Hayes, Jacob Wise, and Brandon Corbin. We cannot wait to see you guys next week. As a reminder, on episode 10, we will be having guests join the podcast, and based off this, we might be interviewing someone from the past. So check that out. It'll be the first podcast ever to interview someone who's not here. And also, if you have any questions for us in the Big Cheese AI team, whether that's for technical things or just things you want us to cover in the podcast, email Big Cheese, a podcast at BigCheese.ai.
BigCheese.ai.
Thanks, guys.
have a great one.